Sundays, a day meant for family time. Some grocery shopping, perhaps. On second, football. Just football.
Roethlisberger looks, crosser, Brown, he caught it, fights to the goal line, breaks the plane, touchdown Pittsburgh!
It's time for Chicago's Fantasy Football Today with Joe Ostrowski.
His weapons on offense are his running backs, and where you go from there, I have no idea.
And Jack Thomason.
Maybe he's my new Christine Michael, my new Binky for the Seattle Seahawks running backs.
Season-long and daily fantasy football discussion all in one show.
Don't act like you're not impressed.
Leave the math to the pros. These guys will help you construct the perfect lineup.
I like where this is going.
You're listening to Chicago's Fantasy Football Today on 670 The Score. Presented by Great Clips. It's going to be great.
Jack is out this week, but I am here for week 8. What is we? Yeah, we are week 8. Okay. We're past the halfway point, at least of the regular season of the fantasy football calendar. My name's Joe Ostrowski, and this week, for the entire hour, not just at the end, Stephen Johnson, the Scores fantasy football expert. You can follow him on Twitter at Stephen with a PH underscore Roto. Morning, Stephen.
Morning. How you feeling about that traffic?
God. I'm here to help you people out. Stay far away from downtown. Far, far away. Detours are fine. Give me a solution. Tell me where I can go. Is there a main roadway that I can go down anywhere in this? Well,
I'm
usually takes me 30 to 35 minutes on a Sunday morning from my house to parking, hour and a half. But whatever. I know you guys don't want to hear about it. I'm just telling you to stay away from downtown. That's my public service to you.
There's a large horde of people running a 5K today, and I'm trying to figure out why. Because it's
horde is the right word. By seeing the people that were going to this race, where are they running? Okay. That's enough. As always, phone lines are open, 312-644-6767, 312-644-6767. If you have a fantasy football question, player you want to hear us talk about, let us know. Give us a ring, 312-644-6767. We get a ton of texts every week, but to make sure that your question is answered, the best route is to call. And you can text us, of course, 67011. On Twitter, at Chicago's FFT670. Eli, throughout the week, especially on Sunday mornings, tweeting out great stats from that account. We tweet out the entire show about 9:30, 10 o'clock. So if you missed it, you can hear the commercial-free version. So make sure you follow us at Chicago's FFT670. I'm at Joe0670. And, Stephen, let's start here. There's some news trickling out, and we'll get to that. And also, we'll hit this London game. I believe it's the last London game. I don't know if anybody even likes these things. They just seem like a major pain in our days.
I would just like it to be a competitive game this time around. I mean, you look at the Ravens and the Jaguars. You look at the Rams and the Cardinals. It's just like, come on. Like, give me something good to start off my day. I should be excited about football starting at 8:30 in the morning and going all day until 11:30 at night. But this year, not so much. Not so much.
They're all horrible.
Oh, I know.
This is...
And the Browns.
I thought Miami, New Orleans might be okay going into that week. The Dolphins were playing better than they gave you a dud. But no, this is the game that has no chance. I don't even think people even watch these games. Who cares? Whatever. Just make sure your lineup is set if you have any Browns or Vikings. We'll talk about some of those players coming up. As if the Browns weren't bad enough, a lot of their defensive players are down. So if I were betting on this game and I stay away from all those London games. It's Vikings or nothing, even though I don't like big point spreads like that in the National Football League. Houston Texans at Seattle Seahawks today. We do picks at Spiegel and Parkins. I do updates in the morning and throughout most of the midday show. And every Friday we do picks just after the 10:30 update. And one of the 3 games I picked against the spread was the Texans, and that was before this news broke. So I'm in the Super Contest, and I pick 5 games a week against the point spread. And when I made the picks, I knew about what was going on. Just to tell you where my head's at is I did not take the Texans. They were one of my 3 on the air at Spiegel and Parkins, but they were not one of my 5 that I entered into the contest. So you're trying to figure out if you have any Houston Texans, wow, what do I do here? This is such an abnormal situation. Here's the thing. We're here to give advice. I don't know. Because for anybody to sit there and tell you that they know how a specific human is going to react in a situation like this, they are full of BS.
Right.
Like, you don't know how they're going to handle it. Is the team going to come together? Possibly. Is the team going to be a no-show because of the distraction? Possibly. Is it not going to affect them in those 3 hours on the field where they're able to escape it for a little bit? They're reportedly going to have a demonstration at the beginning of the game. Possibly. For me to sit here and tell you that I know exactly what's going to happen with the Texans offense, I would be lying to you. Just say lower the bar a little bit. That's where I'm at. Where are you at with this?
I'm right there with you. And the mentality aspect, I would have loved to be a fly on the wall when McNair went to go talk to the team and more or less apologize for what he had said. On top of all this, they're going into Seattle, one of the most difficult stadiums to play in the NFL. I mean, I'm avoiding them at all costs because, like you said, I mean, that's so volatile to how somebody can react to all of that. For the demonstrations, there's been talk of the kneeling, the raising their fists, also even going to take off the Texans decal off their helmet. So, I mean, nothing, it seems like too intense, but still taking off a decal and kind of showing that, we're not going to sit here and take this. It makes you wonder, are they even going to give it their all considering where they are in the standings too? I mean, I don't know. But
how can they be focused?
They can't. They can't. They absolutely can't. This is a huge distraction for as much as McNair wants to try and backtrack this. It's not going to happen. I don't understand how somebody can be, I guess, that blind to the comments that they're making and not realize that that's going to have an effect on your players. And it's unbelievable.
Okay, let's go over the Texans players because I don't think it's going to be as much of an issue with Seattle. I think Russell Wilson actually has a big-time day at home, the way he's been playing lately. But let's go over these Texans. Deshaun Watson. Do your version of start and sit column that you have every Thursday on 670thescore.com. Deshaun Watson, start or sit?
This is the one game where I would consider sitting him. However, it's really interesting. I'm going to go into a little bit of a statistical rundown here. He's very good against the blitz, but when he's actually pressured on the blitz, it falls off a cliff. I'd stay away from him this week in addition to everything else.
I'm playing Deshaun Watson, but as I said, I'm lowering the bar. We've seen situations like against Kansas City on Sunday night where he was able to get some garbage time.
Yeah.
If this is the game script that follows, what I am concerned about, a lot of these games he's been very successful have come down in Houston. He hasn't had that really, really tough road test. New England, yeah, not an easy place to win, but they're still, as far as yards per play, the worst defense in the NFL. His first start, I think that was at Cincinnati. That was a short week. That wasn't much of a test. But most of his big-time games have come at home. So, again, tempering expectations. But I'm playing Deshaun Watson just because the idea that you have another quarterback that's a better option than Deshaun Watson.
Right, and that's one of the difficult things because he's just been so good this year. He's a top 3 quarterback going week 2 on. I mean, it's amazing what he's been able to put together as a rookie, but I'm right there with you. I mean, there's nothing like CenturyLink Field in the NFL. There just isn't.
Playing Hopkins. You're playing Hopkins.
You have to.
You have to. Mostly you have flexes. Some people have double flexes. You're playing DeAndre Hopkins. We know about how many times that Watson's going to look for him. You just do it, especially there might be some garbage time here. Will Fuller, he's scoring you touchdowns in bunches, and it keeps happening. But, this could be a game where, regression happens. The Will Fuller touchdown didn't happen. Then all of a sudden, it doesn't look like a great performance from Fuller.
And that's the thing, because I play a lot of daily, and I'm looking at him, and the price is so good. I'm thinking, okay, he can't keep it up. He just can't keep it up. And I feel like this would be the game where he won't keep it up, but then he will. And again, going to that garbage time thing and going back to that Chiefs game that they had, I just can't push myself despite how bad the matchup is and for the fact that there's 6 teams on bye this week. Flex play in terms of what I'm considering him this week.
See, that's the thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, you're right. 6 teams on bye. That's the situation we're dealing with this week. And then the Thursday night, you had expecting a garbage game. You got a garbage game, especially from the Dolphins side, but it was a low-scoring one. Most likely, if you had a player in that game, you were probably benching him on Thursday. So just the options are not there. what's interesting about what the NFL is doing is there are a few weeks like this, very tough on fantasy football players. You have 3 different weeks where 6 teams are on a bye. They've just jumbled them up together, getting the bye weeks out of the way in the middle.
I hate it. I absolutely hate it.
I don't know. I don't hate it. I really don't mind it. It's tough for fantasy football in the regular season, but I really don't mind it. Get them out of the way. You deal with it for a few weeks, and most teams want it in the middle of the season, and the majority are getting their bye week in the middle of the season.
You look at the teams early on, and specifically the fight that the Dolphins and the Buccaneers put up with that first week bye, and thinking there's no way. And again, the NFLPA, I wouldn't be surprised, honestly, if we go to a system where 6 weeks is the norm. You just get it over in 5 weeks and we're done. You look at weeks 6 to 10, give or take in that range. Again, it's just one of those rough things, and next week isn't going to be much better. That's another 6-weeker or 6-gamer.
Stephen, before we get to what's on your mind today, another thing that stood out to me with Houston and Seattle, after the news broke on Friday, I mentioned in the morning the point spread was 5.5. So the news broke out about Hopkins leaving practice and how upset the players are, and understandably so. The line moved a full point. Now, just to tell you how important that is, to try to explain it, J.J. Watt is worth 1 point to the line, okay? The best pass rusher in the NFL is worth 1 point. The best position players in the NFL, not a quarterback, the best ones, ODB, worth about a point. That's how much the Vegas thinks this is affecting this game. So I'm just saying, be careful with your Texans today.
I'm taking Seattle on that line. I mean, even before then, I just think this is way too much for the Texans to think about and even go through.
There's that chance maybe they come together. Maybe. But yeah, it's hard to say right now.
It is so hard to try and predict.
Sure. What is sticking out to Stephen Johnson, Week 8 NFL's fantasy football?
There's a lot going on the East Coast this week that I'm really intrigued to see how it affects games, specifically the weather. There is a giant rainstorm that's going to be affecting the noon games today, and 3 games in particular. You got the Falcons at the Jets, Chargers at the Patriots, and last one, Raiders and the Bills. That one actually might get mixed up in there too. 49ers and Eagles. So really there's 4 that might get impacted by this. We're talking 20-mile-per-hour plus winds, rain. It's going to affect a lot of passing and a lot of matchups that I think a lot of people were really excited about this week.
Okay, let's go over those games again.
Falcons and Jets.
Okay.
49ers and Eagles. Or I was huge on the Eagles heading into this week. I mean, you look at what happened.
I think 49ers keep it close. Okay.
They might. Chargers and Patriots. And then Raiders and Bills if it gets that far up the east side of... west side of New York.
These are the highest scoring games of the day. They're supposed to be.
Well, and it's funny because they were already talking about the 49ers-Eagles line, and they've already dropped it 2.5 points, just based off of the forecast today for the over-under.
Yeah.
I honestly believe there's going to be a lot of rushing today. LeGarrette Blount, been very big on him this week.
Great matchup.
Yeah, fantastic matchup. Carlos Hyde now I think can get a little bit of a boost as well in this one. I'm.
It's going to be tough. They have to keep the game close for Hyde to get a boost.
Right, and again, I mean, you mentioned you think they might keep it close with the way that they've been playing. A lot of their games have been close this year. They easily could have had 3 wins in hand, and you look at what they've been able to do this year. Beathard, rough start last week, but again, you saw the promise there of him being able to move the ball in that offense, and the Eagles secondary, not the greatest thing out there. If he gets a couple chances to throw, and he's also a little bit mobile, as we saw last week, scoring that rushing touchdown.
Yeah, so look at the running backs in these matchups. I get what you're saying about Hyde. Before last week, when San Francisco was just torched by Dallas, and remember, the Cowboys were coming off the bye, preparing for that easy game for a couple of weeks, something to keep in mind. But they had 5 straight games. They haven't won a game this year, but they had 5 straight games where they lost by 1 score. So they were hanging around, and I think this could be a spot for that to happen. The Eagles, they coming off the Monday night, everybody's high on them.
High.
People are saying they could win the Super Bowl. So
Carson Wentz is the MVP, didn't you know?
Yeah, I believe me. I looked at him at 90-1, and I didn't do anything about it. So, yeah, I like Blunt. I like Hyde in that game. You'd mentioned Atlanta and the Jets. So you're looking at less Julio. Of course, you're playing Julio. You're playing Matt Ryan. but not the big bust-out game for Julio. Could be more of a Freeman game.
Exactly. And not only that, but Tevin Coleman, I think, is a very sneaky play this week as well with what he's able to bring to the table. And really, this might even be more of a Coleman game than a Freeman game, looking at the way that they run the ball. This seemed like it was going to be the game where Matt Ryan was going to bounce back. You look at last week and you're like, he can't even get it done against the Patriots. Yeah, that fog thing was really weird. But it's just like, okay, where are the Falcons currently? Where is this offense? When is this going to get started? You look at what Steve Sarkisian's been doing. He's been on the hot seat here for the last 7 days looking at that game against the Patriots, and you wonder, okay, is this ever going to happen? Julio, you could sense the frustration with Julio last week as well. Just that touchdown.
Sark seems overmatched.
Yeah, he does. He absolutely does. And you got to wonder, is it ever going to happen? And again, the Jets, they've been a little bit better than people have been giving them credit for, especially in the turnover columns. But I just can't sense this being a strong passing game for the Falcons again today. I just can't.
You have the guts to play Forte?
Yes. Surprisingly, and this is the thing that aggravates me to no end, is I was huge on Powell beginning of this year. I thought, okay, Jets have nothing to play for. All of a sudden, they're beating teams that they shouldn't be beating, and we thought this was a team that was going to be playing for the number 1 overall pick.
Yeah, we were expecting them to be trailing by 3 scores in games.
Right.
You're going to be dishing it out to Powell a lot, right?
Exactly. And now we're sitting here with Matt Forte, who's getting the bulk of the carries when all 3 of their backs are healthy. And you got to wonder, when is this going to stop? I don't think it's going to stop. For some reason, they are so obsessed with what Matt Forte can bring to the table when really I think Powell brings it better. And as long as Forte is there and he is healthy and he practiced fully this week, he's going to be the guy. I think he's going to have a good game today.
Other weather games that you were mentioning, you said Chargers, Patriots. So, of course, you're playing Melvin Gordon. He is in. That's already been announced today. Deion Lewis is now the guy in New England. So you look to him. It's no longer Mike Gillislee time. You could probably drop him if you want. They have so many running backs back there.
It's such a carousel.
Just,
I hate it.
You want to carry one of 4 guys? Go ahead. Have fun with it if you really do. LaShawn McCoy, he's locked down RB1 every single week. Yep. Might be your best option every single week. But the other side, this is interesting. I'm glad you mentioned this. You go to the Raiders. People are wondering today, do I play Jalen Richard? Do I play Dwayne Washington? Because Marshawn Lynch is out for 1 week. Now, I'm not expecting a ton.
No.
But both of those guys should be picked up in your leagues. And it's not only to play this week, because what if one of them pops? What if they show the coaching staff something? Because let's not forget that Lynch has struggled this year, and we're talking about the first half of the season. This is when Lynch was supposed to eat. At his stage in his career, how is he going to look in the second half of the season? I would say worse. I don't think he's going to get stronger.
No, and I think what their plan was to kind of wean him in, and it just hasn't worked. You look at the touches he's been getting. He's been floating around 10 to 15 per game, and just the production hasn't been there. He has not been the beast mode of old. If there's a guy out of that setup that I would go after, it'd be Richard. I think he's shown a little bit more promise. He showed more promise against the Chiefs. And again, not a very good matchup whatsoever. The Bills have been better than people have given them credit for, too. The AFC East is just weird this year. But you look at what both backs have been able to do. I think Richard is the guy if you're in a pinch. Again, this is a very heavily affected running back week in terms of the buys. I'd say that's the way to go over Washington.
All right, we do have a game this morning, just over 10 minutes from right now, so let's hit that now before we hit the break or go to a call. You have the Browns and the Vikings. You're not playing any Browns. There's not much to dissect there, but Stephon Diggs, he is returning from his injury. A few Browns are out. McCourty's out. Myles Garrett. Peppers is out on that defense. You're expecting
Who do they have left?
You're expecting this to be a complete blowout. I don't know if that's the way it goes. But the key here, if you're also a Thielen owner, is now Thielen doesn't have to go on the outside. He can do his damage from the slot, and that's where he's been most successful. So you feel good about Diggs. feeling, what Viking do you not feel great about now? And you're not playing Case Keenum, so I'm talking about everybody else.
Well, it's funny because I felt the same way against the Titans last week, and that led me down a terrible path.
They're not the Browns. They are not the Browns.
So I'm really high on Diggs this week. A lot of people are like, is he going to be the decoy? It's that groin. That's something that he could easily re-aggravate. I say go with him. I think he's going to...
If you're the Minnesota coaching staff, there is no reason to push Diggs in a game in London against the Cleveland Browns if he's still hobbled.
Right, exactly. And again, I think he's going to go for over 100 today. I really do. I think that's somebody that makes a major difference on the field. You look at what he's been able to do when fully healthy this year. You take out that Bear game, and again, he's missed a couple others. So I think he's in for a big week. Running back-wise, I think McKinnon's the guy in this game as well. Really, the run defense has been fantastic for the Browns, despite all these people that they're missing today. But being able to catch the ball out of the backfield is something the Browns have had difficulty stopping along with the rest of the pass. I say he's the guy.
I think you play both backs. If they go up early, it's going to be more of a Murray game, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's the thing you have to expect is that's what it's going to be. And I'm kind of having recency bias here just based off of last week and what, the Browns were able to hold the Titans to. But again,
they don't have anybody.
It was so bad. So bad. I just can't see an instance unless it gets ahead, which it very well might, that Murray would be the guy. You do have to start both of them. I do agree, but I think McKinnon's the guy.
312-644-6767, Chicago's Fantasy Football Today. In Wooddale, Randy is on the score. Good morning, Randy.
Good morning. Listen, I got Nelson Aguilar, and he has been really valuable for me over the last 4 or 5 weeks, scoring touchdowns. Mm-hmm. And I want to play him as my flex, but I'm also thinking about, would it be worth taking a shot at putting in Golden Tate, even with his bad shoulder?
It's one or the other?
Tate or Aguilar.
Tate or Aguilar. I love Aguilar this week.
Oh, yeah.
Even in this weather, short passing game.
Tate, I don't think you can bet on, especially with the Sunday night game, in case something happens in the warm-ups and he says, okay, this is going to be tough for me to go or even go at full speed. And not only that, but he's facing a very good Steelers secondary tonight. I think you have to go with Aguilar tonight or this afternoon. You look at what he's been able to do so far. Again, he's one of only 4 players to score more than 10 points per game against the Redskins secondary, so he was great against them. And you look at what San Francisco's done against the slot, absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
Absolutely nothing. 390 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 0 interceptions when targeting the slot.
To back that up, Pro Football Focus every week, they do a wide receiver cornerback chart of the best matchups of the week.
Juicy.
Of all wide receivers, Nelson Aguilar has the 3rd best matchup going up against Quan Williams of San Francisco. I mean, it's all there for Aguilar. I'm playing Aguilar. Too much risk in Tate. And with the Steelers, we always overlook this for some reason. We run to the offense, and for good reason, with Le'Veon Bell and Antonio Brown. But their defense is really, really good.
Oh, absolutely.
A top 10 defense.
Absolutely. You look at, they've just shut out everybody in terms of the wide receiver threats that they've been up against this year. A.J. Green did not have a good game last week either. I expect that to continue. I think the Lions are going to have a really tough time moving the ball against the Steelers tonight.
That's Stephen Johnson. I'm Joe Ostrowski. You've got Chicago's Fantasy Football Today coming up next. Not the Ones. Haven't heard it before? We go over a bunch of players, all the positions that could be the top scoring player at their given position. Not a QB1, RB1, or wide receiver 1. Chicago's Fantasy Football Today is presented by Great Clips. It's going to be great.
It's time for Not the Ones with Joe Ostrowski and Jack Thomason on Chicago's Fantasy Football Today.
Every week around this time, go over the top players each position, at least what we think will be the top players. We eliminate from the conversation top 12 quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends. Stephen Johnson, first time doing Not the Ones.
Yes, I'm excited.
All right.
I'm excited. Let's go.
Give me a guy that could be the top quarterback of the day.
I bashed him last week, and I paid for it. I'm going back to the well. I'm saying Ben Roethlisberger. Dome games, very kind to Big Ben, completing 73% of his passes. Detroit's defense is due for a regression. I'm waiting for it. They've been very touchdown-dependent this year. The Lions give up 305 passing yards per game to quarterbacks at home, near 20 points per game. I say he has a big night tonight.
I'm going to go to Buffalo, Oakland, not Carr, the other side, the guy on the home team, Tyrod Taylor. This game could be an absolute shootout. I know he doesn't have any receivers. His top receiver a week ago was a guy that couldn't hack it with the Bears, and Deontay Thompson. Or maybe the Bears.
How embarrassing is that?
I mean, that is just a joke. He had over 100 yards. Oh. The Bears don't have a professional receiver.
Dontrell Inman.
I mean, come on. Yeah, is he going to play today? Give me Tyrod Taylor. You always have the high floor with the legs. If it's a shootout and we're talking about 4 touchdowns, Tyrod Taylor's going to be a big day. Going to have a big day, and you might have 1 or 2 rushing touchdowns.
He's fantastic at home. Fantastic at home.
Give me Tyrod Taylor. You've got Roethlisberger. Let's go to RB. What do you got?
Joe Mixon. Colts are allowing the most touchdowns to opposing running backs this season. They've allowed 33 points per game to the position in the last 4 games. Mixon all day. Going to have a big game.
All right, we talked about those East Coast games, possibly a lot of running there, and we'll go there. How about Philly? Philly against San Francisco. Great matchup. You have the Eagles, nearly 2 touchdown favorites. I don't know if that comes down, but they are. That's what Vegas is setting it at, just about 2 touchdowns. LeGarrette Blount's going to get the rock. That's how it should set up because of the weather, because of game script. Everything is pointing to LeGarrette Blount having a big day for the Eagles. So I'm certainly at least playing him as a flex. It could be one of those monster 2, dare I say 3 touchdown games. We saw those with the Patriots when they would go up early. Oh, it's
the
LeGarrette
goal line
Blount time.
vulture. The goal line vulture.
It's Blount time. It's Blount time. Smallwood will get his a little bit in the passing game, but I think it's more of a LeGarrette Blount game. To receiver, what you got?
I'm going back and forth between 2 guys. I'm going to go Demaryius Thomas with a big bounce-back game. Was awful last week against the Chargers. He takes on the Chiefs here today. It's been 12 games since Thomas has scored a touchdown. That long. The Chiefs allow the most touchdowns to wide receivers in the league, let alone the most points to the position. He's seeing well over 8 targets a game. Should be the game he finally scores, getting that target group together.
Cam bounce back after what happened here, whatever that game was. I still don't know what it was. One of multiple games last week where 0 offensive touchdowns were scored. Very exciting for fantasy football. The question is, which wide receiver? Funchess or Benjamin? Funchess or Benjamin? Since we're talking about being the number 1 receiver, I'll go to Benjamin. He could have a couple of scores. Kelvin Benjamin is my not the ones. Who's your tight end?
I'm going back to Buffalo. Nick O'Leary, super deep sleeper in addition to being a guy who could break out today. Oakland has allowed 5 tight ends to finish within the weekly top 8 on the year. Should be number 6 today.
Mitch Trubisky will complete more than 4 passes. Mitch Trubisky will attempt more than 7 passes because they're going to have to do that. So give me his blankie, his tight end. When the Bears are trailing by 3 touchdowns, give me Zach Miller for a garbage score at the end. Eli's shaking his head. Why? Oh, you think the Bears are winning today?
No, because you said blankie.
Yeah, it's blankie. It makes him feel comfortable.
Security blanket.
Blanket, Joe.
No, blankie. That's how it goes down. So, my not the ones, Tyrod Taylor, LeGarrette Blount, Kelvin Benjamin, and Zach Miller. And yours, Stephen?
Roethlisberger, Mixon, Demaryius Thomas, and Nick O'Leary.
Yeah, I really like the Mixon call, and it's about time for Demaryius Thomas, but the Mixon is interesting.
He didn't get a single carry in the second half last week and drove me up the wall watching that game against the Steelers. It shouldn't be the case this week.
He should get the touches, and the Bengals should absolutely crush the Colts.
Should roll.
That is the worst roster in the NFL once you take away the quarterback. Those are your not the ones for Week 8 in the National Football League. You've got Chicago's Fantasy Football today, Sports Radio 670 The Score. We do have open phone lines, 312-644-6767, 312-644-6767. Tweet us at Chicago's FFT 670, at Chicago's FFT 670. And, Stephen, let's roll through some text messages that are coming in. 815, need help, quick decision, McKinnon or Chris Thompson. That Cowboys-Redskins game could be a lot of fun this afternoon. Only 2 afternoon games. Thanks, NFL.
That's what happens.
Everybody's going to be watching this game.
Love it.
I know.
I am going to go with Thompson in this one. He's just been so good. And I think the way that the Cowboys rush has been this year, Cousins is going to be looking to Thompson quite a bit, let alone they could find themselves behind early, and it could be a catch-up game where Thompson thrives.
You know what? He already had to make that decision because the game's on now.
Oh,
right?
Perfect.
Because McKinnon's playing in that London game. What's going on with Tevin Coleman and the Falcons? Do I start Dion Lewis? Goes back to our conversation about Steve Sarkisian. How can you trust your Falcons? You really can't.
No, you can't
right?
At all.
Even though Julio Jones has the ability to literally have 300 receiving yards in a game, we've seen that happen in the National Football League. But it's tough to trust the Falcons. It really is. Everybody's frustrated. You hear it in Matt Ryan's comments. They are threatening Sark. You better get it right. You better go to Julio. That they had the another version of the Fog Bowl last week. The Atlanta Falcons are just a mess, but I don't think that they can't fix it by the second half. It's certainly possible, but you are banking on the second running back. I'd rather go with Dion Lewis. He's the hot hand right now, and at times the Patriots go that route.
Right, and the other big thing about this game, this is kind of like what the Washington Redskins are going to be facing, is that the Chargers' pass rush is very good. And I think the way that they're going to be setting it up with Lewis and White as well, looking at James White, so really these two guys could really have a big game, kind of like what they did last week, is that there's going to be a lot of checkdowns because Brady really isn't going to have a whole heck of a lot of time with Joey Bosa and company coming after him throughout the day. I would go the Lewis route as well. I think that's the best play.
Again, if you have any players you want to hear us discuss, give us a ring, 312-644-6767. Text messages, they are rolling in at 67011. And I see a question about Alex Smith or Matt Ryan. Is that where we're at? Like, what kind of universe is this? The Chiefs have had their struggles the last couple of weeks, but I think they do bounce back. But that is the matchup you want no part of in a passing offense. You don't want to go against the Broncos.
You don't, but at the same time,
no,
you're
playing Matt Ryan. I'm playing Matt Ryan.
Right.
Are you?
Yes.
Okay.
However, the way that Alex Smith has been playing this year, quarterback has been one of the most screwy positions in 2017. You look at the guys that people have been able to pick up off the waiver wire, not even in draft consideration, Carson Wentz and Alex Smith, who are just killing it. And you look at what Smith has been able to do. He's leading the league in several passing categories. Alex Smith, the guy that we have bashed for years.
2 weeks ago, he was the MVP, not Carson Wentz.
Exactly.
How quickly things change in this league.
I think he was 75-1. Again, It's these guys, you just look at them and you're like, this is happening?
What was Matt Ryan before last season?
That's true. I mean, it's the same thing. I got to go with Ryan, but again, Smith is creeping up there, and really the Broncos have been showing some holes lately, despite how good they've been historically.
That's Stephen Johnson. I'm Joe Ostrowski. Coming up next, we'll go through some sleepers before we get out of here at 9. And, of course, at 9, the guys will get you set. Hub, Pompey, Manley, they'll get you set for Bears-Saints. An exciting game. It's going to be an interesting test for Mitch Trubisky. Yeah, the Bears could get run. That is certainly possible. Look at them. They're nearly 9-point underdogs. But you want to see Trubisky tested in his rookie season. Here, this is the toughest thing you can do. Go play in the Dome. Go play in Seattle. This is on the same wavelength.
And here's the thing, too, is that after last week, and I thought last week was going to be very, very bad, and it wasn't, I don't know what to make of the Chicago Bears when it comes to their offense.
Was that more Carolina? Wasn't that more the Bears' defense taking over the game?
Yeah, the defensive line. I mean, Akeem Hicks, oh, man.
Pro Bowler.
Love him. Love him. I just can't put a finger on this. I'm looking at that game. I'm like, I'm avoiding that at all costs when it comes to any sort of line. Because I know is whatever I pick, it's going to go the opposite way.
You've got Chicago's Fantasy Football Today, presented by Great Clips on Sports Radio 670, The Score.
You're listening to Chicago's Fantasy Football Today with Joe Ostrowski and Jack Thomason on 670, The Score.
All right, we'll get to sleepers in about 5 minutes, and in about 15 minutes, Guys are in the house ready to preview Bears Saints for you right here on Sports Radio 670 The Score. My name's Joe Ostrowski. Stephen Johnson, the 2017 Score Fantasy Football expert, sitting in for Jack Thompson, Sports Radio 670 The Score. Any last-minute questions, 312-644-6767. We talked about some of the weather issues along the East Coast, so take a look if you have any players, especially receivers or tight ends playing on the East Coast. If you have other options, what the weather situation is as we get closer to kickoff, take a look there. And as far as news this morning, not a ton. Jameis Winston is starting for Tampa Bay. He re-injured that shoulder in Week 7, but he's still good to go.
He had a pretty good game.
Yeah.
With all things considered.
Yeah. You can't really worry about it because his numbers were fantastic.
Right.
However, tougher matchup against Carolina.
This is true. Not as much of a pass rush threat as what the Bills have been able to put together this year, but nonetheless, I still think he's in for a top 12 week with what he has in front of him and just the way that he's been going about with the injury already.
Bills are tough as well. We mentioned that Melvin Gordon is in, so he's good to go. And Golden Tate might go tomorrow night. It's these Monday night situations so tough because you have to make the decision most likely at noon or 3 o'clock today how you're going to handle that Tate situation because your backup would go in.
I can't trust it. I just can't. If you have an option that is serviceable, you take him over Tate. You just can't take that chance because you look at what else might be available. Really, maybe Juju Smith-Schuster is out there where you might be able to pick him up in a pinch, but then again, you're worrying about who do you drop if you have to do that late rush. So make plans now for that backup if you want to run with Tate and see if he plays or not.
And this is just worth noting. I don't know if it's a ton for Week 8, but last night it comes out that Martellus Bennett plans to retire at the end of the season. Bears fans, you know how Martellus Bennett is. You don't know whether or not to believe that if you're Martellus Bennett owner. He doesn't have any value on the trade market, so you just kind of hang on, or you can move on if you want. Jack Thompson was suggesting to just drop him a week ago.
Right, but the other question being, you look at Vernon Davis a couple years ago as well. We thought his value was kind of null and void, and then all of a sudden he gets traded around a couple times and finds his footing again.
Sure.
Same thing might happen here with Bennett, but again, the trade deadline is Tuesday. So, again,
Halloween.
I think there's got to be a lot of fast acting in order to get anything done and get him into a situation that actually makes him rosterable. But again, Packers really aren't going to be competing anything for the rest of this year.
And, this is interesting. This just came out from Adam Schefter on Vontae Davis. When healthy, one of the better corners in the game, that they might trade him before Tuesday. And that makes all the sense in the world. They need to revamp this entire roster. Andrew Luck can hold them up to 500 just by being on the field. His value is unreal. But what are you doing with Vontae Davis? You just need to rebuild. Ballard needs to rebuild that entire roster.
And it's been that way for quite a while,
Yeah.
and I think it's finally just coming to a head where it's like, we can't hold this off anymore. This is going back to the days where Peyton Manning was winning 40 to 35 games when he would go out, throw a touchdown, and 10 seconds later, the defense would give up a touchdown. I mean, this is probably even worse because really the offensive side of the ball, you really don't have that much else unless Marlon Mack continues to develop into something, which he very well might. This might be a big game for Marlon Mack if the Colts get behind on the Bengals, and really he's been getting more and more involved with the passing game. He had 6 targets last week. It might be another big game for him out of the backfield if the Bengals get ahead and the Colts find themselves playing catch-up.
We talked about the Seahawks offense at home against the Texans. Who knows where Houston's mental state is right now? And it being a big day for Russell Wilson, also for Jimmy Graham potentially. It's all setting up there. But there are rumors about a trade there. Once they made that deal, and they're trading their center, Seattle, since they've made that deal, that trade has not worked out. Like, Graham has had a few games, but they made that move expecting him to be a complete game changer. That's the only way you're trading a starting offensive line on a championship-ready team. That trade has been a bust for them, hasn't worked out like they expected. Maybe they can get something for Graham. Boy, I don't know how to feel about that if you're a Graham owner.
And the one time he did get hot, out comes the knee injury, and he misses the rest of the year.
You're just kind of hoping he gets he gets traded to a strong offense.
You do, but I can't see it. I just can't.
You don't see a trade?
No, I don't. I mean, I think in that case, you gotta hold on and see what happens.
Well, is there a team? See, it's rare to first off see NFL trades.
Yeah,
but is there a team that is a top tight end away from being championship caliber? I mean, the NFC is completely wide open. I don't know if Seattle would trade him in conference, but it's wide open. Name a team. I'll give you 10 teams. And I'd say, yeah, they could play in the NFC Championship game. That's how wide open it is. That's what the Aaron Rodgers injury did to that conference.
Oh, absolutely. And I love it. I love having the parity and not knowing what is going to happen. I love the unknown, and the fact that was opening up the door for so many other teams. It's anybody's guess. It really is.
Before we get to some sleepers, some texts that are rolling in, 708 Devin Funchess or Will Fuller. I'm all about Funchess.
Funchess.
Yeah, tough matchup for Fuller. I don't know what's happening with the Texans today. That is just a complete guess. I love it when we hear about trades, what some owners are doing. 847, someone is offering me Tom Brady straight up or Zeke Elliott. That is a hard no for me. Hard no.
That is so bad. I honestly don't think...
The suspension comes into play,
exactly.
Or possible suspension.
And there's been so much talk of, Zeke doesn't stand a chance against this, or, he's not going to serve a suspension this year. I'm in the camp where I don't think he's going to have the suspension this year.
I don't either.
It's going to be like the Brady situation where he's going to serve the following year, if at all.
Blunt or Ingram? Both?
Yeah.
Both? But
yeah.
I'm putting Ingram above Blunt.
Hands down. Hands down. He has been fantastic since that AP trade, and just the amount of touches he is getting per game. Love it. Absolutely love it.
Before we get to sleepers, this guy says his running backs are depleted. Matt Forte or Frank Gore. Just on matchup alone, you go with Forte, and they should go to him a lot. Gore, I mean, there's just nothing there.
Mack outtouched Gore last week. I think it happens again.
You think the switch happens?
Yes.
We mentioned him as a guy to pick up and just stash on your roster a couple of weeks ago.
The wall is finally coming for Frank Gore after years and years.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's finally upon us. It is finally upon us.
Especially in the second half of the season, I can see that happening.
Which players will surprise this week?
I'm not really good at predicting the news.
Let's give you some sleepers on Chicago's Fantasy Football Today.
All right. Steven, your sleeper at... Let's go in order. Let's go quarterback.
C.J. Beathard, we're going back to the pool after Jack called him out last week. Philadelphia giving up the most QB1 games of the year. 6 of their games they've given up QB1 numbers. Beathard, a little bit of a rough go last week, but Eagles are allowing over 21 points per game to quarterbacks this season and the 4th most rushing yards to opposing quarterbacks, with Beathard can bring into play here with that weather.
If your quarterback's on a bye, he keeps surprising us. I'll say Josh McCown. I'll go there. Josh McCown at home against the Atlanta Falcons.
Why is this happening?
Potentially a spot for an upset. I don't think it happens. Potentially. But he just keeps throwing up numbers. He does. I don't know who he's throwing to, but he's throwing numbers up again and again. Running back, sleeper.
Mentioned him a couple times already. I'm going Marlon Mack today. I think he has the big game. Colts should be playing from behind for the majority of today. Again, outsnapped Gore 32-22 last week, and those season-high 6 targets out of the backfield last week should surpass that this week with a big game receiving wise.
Does Tariq Cohen count? He's a backup running back.
He's cooled off, so I would say yes.
Eli's giving me the thumbs up. I think this can be a big game for Tariq Cohen.
Especially if Cunningham's out, which he's questionable today, so possible there.
All right, I'll go Tariq Cohen on the turf. I'm looking forward to seeing that. Wide out.
Cole Beasley of the Cowboys. I've gotten some heat for this already with a few of my buddies this week, but in Beasley's last 3 games versus Washington, he's averaged 15 points per game in PPR. Redskins secondary has been fantastic thus far. Only wide receivers to score more than 10.5 points in PPR scoring: Nelson Aguilar, Aldrick Robinson, Mac Hollins, and Albert Wilson. Slot guys, shifty guys. Cole Beasley will continue that today.
Juju Smith-Schuster.
Love it.
Martavis Bryant is not playing. He was on scout team earlier this week. Mike Tomlin says he's not going anywhere. I don't believe him.
Nope.
Once we get to Tuesday and the deadline passes, if he's still a Steeler, then I'll believe it. It just seems like it's not going the other way. I don't know if Martavis. What we do know this week, Martavis Bryant's not even going to be on the field, so it's a prime spot for Smith, Schuster, and we skip tight ends because everybody's a sleeper. Once you get outside the top 12, we're really talking about sleepers, but we did that earlier.
I will offer this, though. Tyler Kroft, I think, will have a big day for the Bengals.
Yeah, that's the supreme matchup guy. If you're looking in daily fantasy, there's a guy. Do you have anybody that you love in daily fantasy this week?
We had this discussion last night with a couple of my other buddies. If you're looking for a very deep play.
Oh, we're going deep.
J.D. McKissick of the Seattle Seahawks.
So you think the Seahawks are rolling in this game, huh?
I think there will be the opportunity. Procise is going to be out again.
Sure.
I think he will have some opportunities to break one. We've seen it already happen this year. He is bottom of the barrel in terms of his costs. So if you really want to shave off some points, go after some bigger name players, there's a guy to fill in to make that happen.
I don't know why, but I was just thinking about A.J. Green, and I don't know if he fits sleeper or not the one, but Andy Dalton's probably going to have a good day today.
I'd say so. Yeah. He's my start this week in the column.
That's Stephen Johnson. I'm Joe Ostrowski. We're getting out of here, making room for Hub Arcus, Patrick Manley, and Dan Pompei, getting you set for Bears Saints for the next 3 hours right here on Sports Radio 670. The Score. If you missed any of the show, remember, we're here every Sunday, 8 to 9 a.m., Chicago's Fantasy Football Today, but in about a half hour from now, we will tweet out the entire commercial-free version at Chicago's FFT 670. Oh, and by the way, I have a podcast which comes out Sunday night. It's about gambling. It's about the next week's point spread. It comes out late Sunday night. You can find that on iTunes. Early Odds with Joe Ostrowski. It's brand new, so check it out. I'm on there with a bookmaker. It's a lot of fun. But coming up next, Hub, Pat, and Dan Pompei right here on Sports Radio 670, The Score.
Thanks for listening to Chicago's Fantasy Football Today. You can find the podcast on Twitter at Chicago's FFT 670.
What sets teams apart? On the scoreboard, it's points. At DePaul, it's a point of pride. It's less about hand checks and more about gut checks. Less about hardwood and more about heart. Stamina, willpower, drive. You won't find them in any playbook, but you will find them beating in the chests of every DePaul player. The DePaul Blue Demons, playing possessed. DePaul basketball is back in Chicago at new Wintrust Arena. For season tickets, mini plans, and group ticket info, visit DePaulBlueDemons.com.